is off. Right. I'll go over here. Very well. Right, guys, we think this is working. Obviously, it's one-way conversation until the end, and we'll open up some questions at the end. If the internet cuts out, we're recording the whole thing, so you can watch it about 20 minutes after the presentation stopped. You can go back and watch any slides at that point. We'll turn the webcam off in a minute, so the streaming works. The internet's not great yet, but we've worked out if you turn our webcam off and just watch this presentation, it should be a lot clearer. At the bottom of your screen, there's a chat page, or there's a little hand mark that you can click on if you've got any questions at the end, and we'll try and answer all of your questions at the end and as we go. Presentation is very general. We're covering a lot of areas. There's a lot for staff and coaches on this one. And then myself and Graham will look at putting some other things together for the individual coaches going forwards. Hope you enjoy it, and yeah, here we go. So. So Graham's going to start us off and just talk a bit about the venue and lead into a bit about the training. So here you go. Here's Graham.
Cheers, Rob. What we've got pictures of there is the new 50-metre pool, which is a new complex, only about a year, 18 months old now. That we've got at North Arizona University. We've utilised this pool for the majority of the camp. We had 4 days we had to go short course yards, so which coming in was a little concern, and possibly one of the 2 challenges of the one we had being food. But actually, on reflections, having 3 or 4 days short course yards within the first week period actually worked out very well for the athletes. And for one of the recommendations we'll have going forward to utilise more short course yards in that first week when people are acclimatising. The other one that I just briefly mentioned then being the food. There was graduations at the university 3 days after we got here, which is normal for this time in May. So a lot of the canteens, a lot of the food eateries were shut down for a few days, so we actually had catering brought into the hotel. On the plus side, the catering was brought in, been excellent. So again, that's something going forward in future camps. We will hopefully utilise this catering again, because the actual quality of the food is far better than in some of the more generic food areas on campus where some of the food choices can't be or aren't the best at times. In terms of the training itself, as in the plan that went out to most people, the first 10 days of the camp were fairly low level, and moving into a bit back-end speed and more intensity in the second half of the camp. So this week, currently, so between weeks 1.5 and weeks 2.5, we're doing the majority of the faster work, you can call it that, when it's still aerobic capacity, and then looking to build back down in the last 3 or 4 days. In terms of on return, the most important bits probably are making sure the intensity remains low level for the first week, maybe 10 days that they come home, and ensuring all the athletes continue filling the smarter base and other testing measures which we've been utilising here.
Cool. So the next slide is actually a video, and I wanted to demonstrate, especially to the staff, potentially how much harder it will be at Worlds. In Mexico, it's similar height. So what we did is me and Smithy went for a run. I'll let you watch the video, and I'll talk a bit more about it at the end. Right, guys, me and Smithy have come for a quick run. We're going to do a mile on the indoor track, a slow run. We're going to show you afterwards how well we can talk and what our heart rates are. So we're just about to start. My heart rate is about 95 from walking over. Smithy's is probably not far off. And we'll talk to you at the end of it. So a bit bouncy. We've done 1 lap. My heart rate's at 140, 143. We're knackered already. So we've now run half mile. How you feeling, Smithy?
I felt better.
We're both saying that we'll be able to talk quite a bit now. And it's not that your legs feel tired. It's just your top of your chest. My heart rate's 168, probably be about 120, 135. at this pace. Halfway on the last lap. What you've got to remember is it's air-con in it. Maybe what's your heart rate at? 172. Mine's 167. I would probably say that our pace is probably a little bit slower than it would be at home. A quick update when we finished. So we just finished. I think 10.5 minute mile. I'll probably run at 8.5 at home. How you feeling, Smithy?
Not better, first. I mean, that's 13 days in now as well. It's not acclimatised, I'm acclimatised. Still bloody hard work.
Right, so heart rate still, we've probably been stopped a minute, it's probably, mine's still 140.
Still.
So yeah, bit of a snapshot. Me and Smithy are walking back now. What's your heart rate now, Smithy?
107, that's 4 minutes after finish exercise.
Mine's not far off. Me and Smithy are both saying that we ran around like a forest park thing a couple of days ago. And that was a lot harder being outside. It's not particularly hot. We reckon it's about 25, if that, bit of a breeze. And indoors just then running 200 metre track with air conditioning, really nice. I'll still say now I'm probably out of breath a little bit. I've noticed it a couple of times walking back from the pool. Smithy, you're probably a bit more used to it now walking back.
We're walking hard up the tour now, but we're trying to go anything above that. We're almost 2 weeks in now, still challenging, a lot more than it would be. Even Colorado 2 years ago, when you're only 800 metres, extra 500 metres here seems to make a big difference.
Okay guys, so that was just a quick look at just general stuff, just to show the kind of difference in demands on not an athlete but a member of staff, and possibly looking at how members of staff just need to think about how long they've got now until they go to Mexico, and what things they can put in place, general exercise, to make sure that they're in a suitable place to be able to deliver what they need to deliver at the Worlds. Okay, we're going to move over to Kath now.
Okay, thanks Rob. Hi everyone. Just wanted to take a bit of time to go through the monitoring that we've put in place to look at both the preparation and acclimatisation for altitude, but also the effectiveness of the camp. So our primary measure from a performance point of view is the step test. And we did a full step test before we departed for the camp. So for most of the athletes that was I think a day before we travelled. Some athletes it was a couple of weeks before we travelled. And then what we've been doing while we've been here is a step test check, so just doing 3 steps of that test. And we're primarily at the moment using it as an acclimatisation monitoring tool. So the theory is that we are looking for an athlete's blood lactate response to migrate back to their pre-altitude training camp measures. So this graph that you're looking at now is from an athlete on this camp who has followed probably the predicted time course of acclimatisation, so approximately 7 days. So the navy blue dotted line is their test pre-camp, and then the 3 other marks on there are from the step test checks, with the red one being the most recent, where actually you can see that we've not only we've surpassed where we were pre-altitude. So like I said, that's been sort of the classical timeline that this athlete's followed, about 7 days to acclimatise. And I just wanted to put in a bit of a contrasting step test. So the next one is from an athlete who took, I think it was up to 11 days to acclimatise, probably largely impairment related. And so we did an additional step test check, which is the turquoise line on this graph. So you'll see that again, the navy blue line is the test we did pre-camp, and the others are the step test checks between then and now, with the turquoise one being the most recent. And like I say, there are some impairment factors that mean that acclimatisation process took slightly longer. The reason that we've used the step test for this is obviously within the National Performance Centre, it's our primary monitoring tool, so our athletes are really accustomed to doing it, very good at delivering a step test, so it's good, reliable data. And we found that it's hugely sensitive to changes when we're at altitude. So it's a good tool for us to know when someone's acclimatized and when we can sort of push on a bit with training. So in addition to the step test, there's a number of other monitoring measures that we've been using. So from a physiological perspective, we've been looking at what's now classed as the gold standard in terms of altitude effectiveness, called hemoglobin mass testing. So we did that protocol at the start of the camp, and we'll be doing it at the end of the camp, and that gives us a real indication of the positive changes that altitude has from a physiological point of view. We've supplemented that with a full blood profile as well, just to be able to demonstrate alongside these performance tests that, you know, where the changes from altitude have happened. The other monitoring tests that we've been doing, and again, these are pre-camp, during camp, and after the camp, on a daily basis, we obviously use smarter-based data to look at our athlete wellness, and obviously there are a number of factors that are monitored daily within that, sleep and general readiness to train being two of them. And they, alongside our sort of physical monitoring data, help us to determine, again, whether an athlete's acclimatized or not. And the other measures that we've been doing most strictly in the first 10 days were hydration measures daily. As you may or may not be aware, when you're at altitude, when you're trying to acclimatise, your breathing rate goes up, and if you're breathing more frequently, then you're losing more moisture as you're breathing, so you tend to get dehydrated. So we take osmos every day to monitor that. Alongside that, we're doing daily body weights, and that's also an indirect indication of hydration, but the main driver for measuring that is to make sure that we're not losing weight on altitude. That can be quite common, especially for some individuals who have a bit of a loss of appetite when they're up at this height. And then alongside this monitoring, sort of most of the training sets we're using RPEs to get an indication of an athlete's subjective evaluation of where they're at. And understandably, you can imagine that first 10 days or so of the camp, that's significantly elevated compared to sea level.
Perfect, thanks, Kath. We're going to move over to Richie now, and Richie's going to talk a bit about the leading and the period of time here.
Okay, so moving on from Kath, one of my main roles on this camp is to try and understand and get a grasp of an athlete's health on a particular day, and over that time period you get to understand what the athlete's norm is. This is the wellness scores. This is a particular athlete on the camp, so this just gives us a general subjective look at an athlete's wellness. To facilitate any discussions with coaches, the athlete reported information may not always be enough. So we've utilised grip strength that provides us with potentially some physiological data that will help us identify an athlete's readiness to train. And this is for the same athlete, a typical grip strength session or day to day. And you can see there are some differences through there. But what's important is how the subjective information and the grip strength correlate, and understanding what is a significant drop and what's not. So what we think about is an 8% drop, and that's classed as significant. And again, this is about readiness to train. We're not telling coaches that training needs to be adapted. It's about providing coaches with real-time information on how the athletes are responding to training so that they can make an informed decision. And this is just the interrelationship between wellness and grip strength. So you can see that as the week progresses, grip strength can go down, but it's the percentage drop that we're really concerned about. So you can see that from the day before, the blue line is 105%, so that's a 5% increase. Going into the 20th of May, this particular swimmer then drops 15%, so that's significant. And it's about making sure that we have a conversation about whether we need to adapt anything, whether we need to add anything into the programme. The other thing that is part of our load monitoring program is volume planning. And you've just got some bullet points at the bottom there, and it just helps us to understand how athletes respond to load, helps us to achieve performance goals, helps us to analyse athletes' response to training, ensure that we've got an adequate balance between training stress and recovery, and to help determine the links between training and performance, and from my perspective help reduce the likelihood of any niggles or any overuse injuries, and more importantly to maximise contact with the water. And this is just a typical example of volume planning. Again, this is not acutely used by coaches, but it's there for a reference. It's there to make sure that when the planning increases in volume, the coaches have got some guidelines on what is deemed safe and not. So that's just a typical graph that we use. The challenge of altitude, from my perspective, comes on from what Cass said about RPEs. Volume and intensity are key in swimming, and altitude can affect an athlete's perceived effort. And this can present with challenges when planning a training week. A swimmer's rate of perceived exertion is recorded each session on this camp, both in the water and in the gym. And the coach can also have an awareness of what their desired RPE scales are. And this is a particular athlete, impairment specific, that in the second week did show some discrepancies between potentially what was desired and what was actually occurring. So you can see the red line is the percentage difference in what the coach wanted versus what the athlete reported. And again, it's about facilitating conversations, making sure that the athlete is aware of the level of intensity that is required to train that particular session. And then it's important going forward that if we're going to keep going with these camps, it's useful that the athletes ensure that Smarter Base is completed daily and not weekly. So don't clump the volumes in at the end of the week, because it's very difficult then to ascertain whether the RPEs are appropriate. In order for me and the coaching staff to look at training going forward into altitude, 4 to 6 weeks of volume and RPEs completed on Smarter Base in the lead up to camp is really important. Failure to complete Smarter Base may lead to loading errors and less than optimal adaptation to altitude. Finally, future links. Obviously, the World Championships is a long programme, both with the training camp pre and then the competition after. So we're looking to work with Hypo2 to potentially look at physiotherapy support and soft tissue therapy support as required. So as more information comes through from that, we'll let you all know. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Richie. Okay, we can move over to Jamie now. Jamie's going to talk a bit about the S&C, what the athletes have been doing, and a bit about the facilities we've got use of.
Thanks, Rob. Hi, everybody. How do we change it? There we go. Gym facilities, firstly. Very good gym facilities. Okay, a lot of space. As you can see on there, it's particularly machine-based equipment. There's not a lot of free weights. Only one lifting platform. It's something we've had to take into account during the sessions for guys that have got exercises that need lifting platforms or squat racks. We've had to kind of stagger them slightly. There is plenty of space, but due to the running track that surrounds or that's on the inside, there's basketball courts as well. It can lead to athletes sometimes being at opposite ends of the gym, which isn't ideal. The last couple of weeks, we've brought in, near this sink area in the middle picture, there's plenty of room around here where everyone ideally brings their equipment in, so we can keep a close eye on everybody. It's a lot easier to see athletes' technique, and we're not having to patrol the gym. There's a large variety of equipment. As I've said before, a lot of it's machine-based, but there are plenty of stability balls, cable-based equipment, and there's a cardio theatre separate that's ideal for potential rehab or conditioning, which again will go through between physio and strength and conditioning coach and coach as well. Considerations for the future, some things that we've kind of picked up on. Even now in the summer months when a lot of the students have either graduated or left anyway, we're having to wait for certain pieces of equipment. As mentioned with the lifting platforms and other various things, something to consider when the vast majority of students will be back in September and October. Because the amount of students in the gym will increase exponentially, so it's just something to potentially think about. There's certain machinery that we've used at the centre that's potentially not present, something to talk about. We are able to adapt, but it does require additional people, so that either takes a staff member out or another athlete out. So again, that's potentially a conversation we may need to have about certain pieces of equipment. Areas of development, improving relations with the gym-based staff. On the whole, it's been really good. We've only really had access to equipment such as TRX has been a bit iffy here and there. Sometimes we've had it, sometimes we've not. So it's just something to potentially work on. So moving on to my role, what I've been doing with the athletes in the last couple of weeks. The primary aim for this camp was to improve the basic motor patterns and movement patterns for the majority of the athletes. We want to be able to build the stability throughout the body so that the amount of volume that they're performing in the pool, they're able to maintain their efficiency, their performance. There's not a particular drop-off. We want to reduce the injury risk and increase the athlete robustness. Going on to the middle picture, hopefully you can all see that we've been using external cues quite a lot to highlight specific aspects of movement patterning. If we've identified specific athletes that may struggle with certain movements, we've used these external cues to aid in the correction. The whole point of these is to increase the awareness of the athlete, of their own body, and the positioning, activation of the correct musculature that we need and that they need in the pool during the movement being performed. So a lot of the movements that we're trying to perform in the gym will translate across into pool performance. So for me, going back as well, I'm aiding in delivering and overseeing athletes' pre-pool work. On the whole, been great. Go through their release work, through activation, mobilization, finishing with the priming of the CNS, so that's things like jumps, med ball slams. And on the whole, they've been great. They get on with it and they know what they're doing. A massive benefit, particularly for this camp, has been working closely with Richie. So as he's talked about before with the grip strength, the wellness scores, things like that, that's enabled us to be on the same page regarding how athletes are feeling, how they're doing that day, their current physical status. And due to the load monitoring that we've been doing and the regular conversations that we've had, even after their pre-pool sessions, we're able to see whether the volume needs to be reduced or it's just for their optimal training loads, ideally. Thank you. Rob?
So we're coming towards the end of the presentation now. What we're going to do in a minute is open up to questions. So if anyone's got any questions, they can ask some questions. One thing that we have noticed about the facilities is because the swimming pool and the gym and a couple of the other areas are newly built, the disabled access is probably one of the best sites we've ever been on. So from the toilets to the doors to the ramps to the braille, everything is really geared up for a para team to visit here in the future. So with the chats, this is the first time we've used this, so if you've got any questions, I believe you can raise a hand and we can turn your microphone on so everyone can hear your question. And we'll give it a couple of minutes, and if no one's got a question, we'll finish the webinar. If any of you missed the beginning, you can come back onto the link after about 20 minutes and there'll be a video of the whole presentation at that point. So, open to questions. Right, Steph has a question. We're going to turn on your microphone now, Steph. Okay, Steph, you should be able to speak and everyone should be able to hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Cool. It was two questions. One about the food. Is there anything that I can do my end to support the needs, or is it just because it is in the cafeteria, it's kind of a bit more free reign? Just want to know if there's anything I can do.
Yeah, I'll start us off and I'll go around to the group see if there's anything else I've missed. So the cafeteria that we've got access to on the university campus is currently limited due to the main students being away, so very closed. There is good food choice there, but there's also food choices that we wouldn't want the athletes to have. And what's good with that is the athletes then have to make the right choices. We've also used the in the hotel service for food as well, which has actually been really good, really solid choices of food. Not a massive variety, but good choices. Graham, you got anything to add on that?
No, I mean, I think certainly food in the hotel that you've arranged stuff has been excellent.
Okay.
The reasonable choice has been a couple of either meat and fish options, a few different vegetables, soups, all the stuff you want the athletes eating. And for me, going forward, I'd probably utilise that more than maybe the hotspot. Whereas Rob said there's some good choices there, but there was some less good choices should be made, which occasionally some of the athletes have been taking.
Yeah, what's also really interesting is where the hotel is just based just slightly off Route 66, and there probably is about 50 fast food restaurants within a 10-minute walking distance from us along the road, and that's an interesting concept when obviously that temptation for the athletes is literally opposite the hotel. What was your second question, Steph?
It was about the bloods. It was just I wasn't sure. Was Kath, you were saying about the full blood counts. Was that done before we went, and we'll do it when we get back, or have you done it when you're there? Like, is there any discrepancy between different testing places of doing stuff? It was just a question, really. I wasn't sure.
They all had full blood profiles done 6 to 8 weeks before we went, because obviously anyone that needed iron supplementation needs that long to act. The hemoglobin mass stuff has been done here at altitude and will be done at the end of the camp at altitude, because yes, there would be discrepancies in that testing protocol because of the air pressure. But in terms of the full blood profiles, that's almost just a secondary measure here that we got done at the same time, but that would be comparable to what we get done at home. But the primary measure for us in terms of blood is the HB mass.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, we're going to go to Jenny next. Okay, Jenny, you should be live. Do you want to ask your question?
I've got two, please. First one, with the physiological testing, so the lactate and everything else you've done, does that tie in with subjective reporting from the athletes on the acclimatisation? So when you see that they're ready physiologically, is that when they're reporting that they're feeling ready?
Yes, I mean, you still do tend to see higher RPEs even when physically they would show to be acclimatised. But the other monitoring that we do alongside the step test, which I didn't put on the graphs, but we do collect the RPE data. So I've been plotting that alongside the physical data as well. And you would say generally, yes, RPE is higher on most things when acclimatised here. Yeah.
Okay. And second one was, has there been any information on the use of soft tissue and physio at the university? Have the athletes tried any of it, or is there access to it? And what sort of standard are they at?
Yeah, so we've got a meeting with the providers this afternoon, so more detail will come from the back of that. But we've had soft tissue therapy in for one appointment each swimmer every week. Okay, great. And the feedback has been generally good. Uptake has been generally good, so that's that. At the minute, the soft tissue therapy is the only option on the table because we haven't had a sit down with Hypo 2. And the driver behind the additional soft tissue support was the length of the World Championships and the altitude camp, so that was the main driver.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, Jenny, we're going to meet you now, and we're going to go to Chris next. Right, hi Chris, you should be able to ask your question.
Yeah, hi everybody. I just wondered how the feedback was being done to the home program coaches of the athletes that aren't centre-based.
So what me and Graham are going to do, we're going to do this additional reports as well, but we're also, after the success of this webinar, we're going to invite those coaches into a webinar session like this. And give them slots so then we can discuss and show the graphs of their particular athletes and talk live to them over the next coming week.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're just checking if there's any other questions that anyone's got. Doesn't look like there is, so thank you ever so much for joining the webinar. Obviously, if you've got any particular individual questions that you want to send through an email or text, please do that. And thank you for your time.